So I know that James is with us, and welcome, James Heddle. And I'm not sure if Mary Beth Brannigan is with us, but James,
Yes.
welcome.
Oh, thank you, Ellen. Thank you so much. I am with you. I'm with Jim.
Yes, you
We're
are.
both here. And thank you so much for having us on. And we're really looking forward to the national screening of the documentary, which is the articulation of the third part of the nuclear problem, really. We've got the war, the weapons, we've got the power, and then we've got the waste issue. And what we're focused on is the waste. SOS, the San Onofre syndrome, nuclear power's legacy is what our film is about. And we cover the story of San Onofre in Southern California that has, it's an microcosm of what the problems are all over the country. Where we have piling up thin canisters that won't last very long at all, filled with nuclear waste that's going to be lasting millions of years. And so these are weapons in place all over the country and need to be dealt with. Jim, do you want to say anything more about that?
Well, this is a local story with global implications, and it's also a paean to the power of people power. We trace the involvement of what Eisenhower called an informed and vigilant public, how action based on this vigilance and awareness can actually have an impact on City Hall. And we think it's both encouraging and a distress signal for a situation that faces it all, but is not much discussed or in public awareness. And so we're hoping that this will start the dialogue on a very undiscussed but existentially important issue.
Right. So there's tons of this all over the country, just sitting there in corroded temporary canisters. And we actually want to say there is a temporary solution anyway, a stopgap solution that we are advocating for in the film. So please do watch it. Come to our premiere, which will, anybody in the LA area, it's going to be at the Regal Theater in downtown LA, Sunday, October 8th at 7:30. I've put the link in the chat to buy tickets. And we'll also be having a virtual premiere the following Sunday, where everybody can watch wherever you are. And you can also buy tickets through that film festival. The Awareness Film Festival is where we'll be screening the first night in October 8th.
This is the launch of a nationwide campaign that's being organized by the wonderful women at Mocha Media. And we hope everyone will join, because we're going to aim at having local screenings in reactor communities and concerned communities all around the country. And we're hoping for a wide participation in this ongoing campaign.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. And hold on just one second before we go to Harvey and Linda. I've added the website. And Mary Beth, if it's possible, could you add the links that you added to the chat again right now? Because I was
okay, I will do that. It'll take me a second, but I'll do that.
Okay, so everybody.
Hi, Linda.
Hey, hi.
Everybody look out for that. And, you know, I've been a long-time associate and very close associate of Lisa Smithline. And so, you know, what Lisa does for films and what she's worked on and really sort of trailblazed as a process is sort of like to have these great documentary films have this sort of educational component that also draws people into the activism that is being practiced by the people who are featured in the films. So we'll be bringing that forward, of course, as part of the San Onofre syndrome when we have the virtual screening for PDA. But I also want to just say this about this particular film. I think you've actually hit a very important moment because of this kind of charm offensive that's occurring around nuclear power right now. And I can't remember the name of the guy, but he's a prominent guest on talk shows. Michael, he has a long last name beginning with S.
Dicekov.
Yeah, and he's on show after show after show. And there are people who are on the progressive left who have been seduced by this, including the founding editor of Jacobin magazine, who's a friend of mine. We differ on this issue. Yeah, that's right, Mila. And so, look, it's very important. This aspect and the focus of this, I mean, this was so big in our culture in the late 1970s and early 80s. You look at the film a little later, like Aaron Brockovich, citizen activism to protect communities against this level of toxicity. And I think it's an essential component to what we are going to try to be advocating for when we advocate for renewable energy, safe energy, and as we get ourselves on a pathway to dealing with what we've done to the global climate by getting rid of these toxic forms of energy. So thank you so much. And James and Mary Beth, we look forward to being in touch with you and working with you in the coming months for your film. Thank you so much.
Thank you again for having us.
Thank you. And now we have two more guests. And I think, Harvey, when I last spoke to you, you didn't know that we were going to have James and Mary Beth on before.
They're my buds.
There we go.
Yeah, long time.
Really.
Many issues.
And Harvey Wasserman is he's not just, of course, the one of the people who put on the great No Nukes event in Madison Square Garden back in whatever that was, 79 or 80.
1879.
Yeah, there we go. Right. And he has been alive many centuries. And he's the author of incredible books. He's been a great national advocate, famously, really very famously on two fronts. One for that we actually have elections where the votes are counted, and therefore the people get to decide who their representatives are in our system of government. A great activist on that front, and then of course the work against the nuclear power industry. And also joining him is Linda Seeley, who is at least I have been telling people, and I think she's much more than this, but is the vice president of Mothers for Peace. So Harvey, let us know what's on your mind right now. I know that Diablo Canyon in California is a focal point of your work around trying to get this one power plant shut down. And then, after maybe your opening thoughts, we'll go to Linda for her opening thoughts, and then we'll have a dialogue with the audience.
Well, thank you so much, Alan. I think that people who advocate for nuclear power see this kind of magical unicorn running across the field, and we're like the hunter and Bambi. But the reality is that there are 94 reactors in the United States, 93 operating, one about to come online in a year in Georgia, and each one of them is its own issue. Every reactor in this country is a pageant of complete incompetence and dishonesty. And the number one in the country right now is Diablo Canyon. There was a beautiful deal cut in 2016 with the governor, the lieutenant governor, the CPUC, the assembly, the unions, the local governments, the environmental groups, to shut the two reactors at Diablo Canyon, which are surrounded by earthquake faults. And we have a plan to phase out the workers and get them retrained, beautiful labor issues taken care of. We have a plan to phase in renewable energies, which is working beautifully, even though the state of California is trying to kill solar energy, which is quite amazing. And it was all laid out perfectly, exactly the way it should be, although the reactors were allowed to operate a little longer than we wanted. And Gavin Newsom, out of the blue, came in last year and stabbed us all in the back and decided to keep these two reactors going. Now, these reactors are critical because as I say, we have 94 reactors in the country online or about to. The average age of the American reactor is 40 years old. When you hear someone say they're in favor of nuclear power, you say, which reactor are you in favor of? Because they're all about to collapse. They're all falling to pieces. They are unconscionably dangerous. So we have this issue. I had a piece about it in Counterpunch last Monday. And we are about to now do everything we possibly can with the Mothers for Peace, which is a great 50-year-old organization, to shut these 2 reactors and to convert California to 100% renewables. And I want to point out that Germany, which shut its last reactor this year, is now getting more than 51% of its energy from renewables. And they are on target to go, this is the world's 4th largest economy. California is the world's 5th largest economy. And so Germany is on target to go 100% renewable by 2030, and California could easily do the same if we shut these 2 reactors, which are surrounded by earthquake faults, falling apart, embrittled, cracked, incompetent management, you name it. This is the fight of our lives.
Thank you so much, Harvey. And Linda Seeley, the floor is yours.
Thank
Welcome.
you. Glad to be here today. Mothers for Peace has been fighting Diablo Canyon since 1973. We are, what we do is legal challenges. And currently we have 3 legal cases going. When, thanks Harvey for the background too, on Diablo. When PG&E decided to ask for a renewal of their operating license, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission gave them a free pass. There's a rule at the NRC that says, if you're going to apply for an extended license, you have to apply for it at least 5 years before the end of the current license. And because of this swift turnaround with Gavin Newsom and the state legislature that happened last year, pulling the rug out from under all of us, PG&E is going to have exactly 10 months from the time that the Unit One reactor is scheduled to shut down and for the NRC to review its license application. The license application review is one that takes years to do. And the NRC has given PG&E a free pass on this. So we've challenged the NRC, and now we're in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and that appeal will be heard probably the first week of January of 24. The second thing we're doing right now is that we're involved in the case at the Public Utilities Commission, because the PUC is the one that is, because as you probably all know, or maybe you don't, the deal for keeping Diablo Canyon open was a very sweet one for PG&E. They're getting a $1.4 billion forgivable loan from you and me, from the taxpayers and the ratepayers in California. And they're getting a $1.1 billion grant from the U.S. Department of Energy to keep this ancient, cracking, dangerous nuclear power plant going. So the PUC, though, has to decide whether or not it's prudent to keep this plant running and whether or not it is safe to keep the plant running. And so we've challenged them on several different issues at the PUC, one being the seismic integrity of the plant, another being the prudence of spending all that money on it when they could use $1.4 billion to buy a hell of a lot of solar energy for every single rooftop in California, for one thing, and battery storage too. And then also the fact that we don't need the power from Diablo Canyon, because, and this is Gavin Newsom's big thing. Oh, if we don't have Diablo Canyon, we're going to have blackouts. It's completely untrue. And we have an expert witness, so you can look up his testimony at the CPUC, who, proves beyond the shadow of a doubt that we do not need Diablo Canyon. In fact, it impedes the entrance of renewables onto the grid because it takes up 2,200 megawatts on the grid. So we're doing that, and we're pushing at the PUC to hold the money back from Diablo Canyon. The third thing we're doing is that we have sent an emergency petition to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and I just heard from our lawyer that they're going to reply to us tomorrow. And this emergency petition is about the reactor vessel of Unit One. The Unit One reactor vessel was manufactured in 1967. It's under extreme, all nuclear power plants run like this. The reactor vessels are under extreme pressure, extreme heat, and extreme radiation. And those three things together over years and years and years in the metals that they use to create these things, especially the Unit One reactor vessel at Diablo Canyon, because it was manufactured in 1967 before they understood as much as they do now about metallurgy. And we have discovered that the Unit One reactor vessel is brittle. And what that means is it's running along at a high temperature with all this pressure and all this radiation going. And if, God forbid, there should be an emergency, say there's an earthquake. I want to get back to earthquakes too after this. Say there's an earthquake and they have to shut it down fast. The way they shut it down is by pouring cold water into the vessel to stop the chain reaction of the neutrons. And if that should happen, there's a very big chance that that reactor vessel could shatter into 1 million pieces. And there's no backup safety system for a reactor vessel. There is nothing between that reactor vessel and the biosphere to protect anything. And so we have asked them to, right around October 1st, the Unit One reactor vessel is going to be taken down for maintenance, called a refueling outage. And our petition says that, number one, we have to, the NRC may not allow that reactor to start up again until they can check the embrittlement of the reactor vessel itself. And they can do that by testing little bits of the metals that the reactor vessel is made of, which they put purposely into the reactor vessel when it's being manufactured for this express purpose of pulling a little piece of that reactor, of that metal out and testing it for embrittlement. They have not tested the Unit One reactor vessel since 2003. For 20 years, or 2002, 21 years, they have not checked it. They're obligated to check it every 10 years, but they have asked for and received exemptions for testing the metal in the reactor. So it is an extremely dangerous situation that we're in right now. And if that reactor vessel blows, Southern California is right. It's in the wind, or whatever you call that.
So is the Central Valley with all the produce, and so is the Bay Area, because the wind will eventually shift up to the Bay Area too. And so you've got all of California at risk from this one nuclear plant that we don't need.
And we don't need it.
So I want to add with Alan that we have a full-on campaign, and my Linda is fantastic. Linda's been on the case even longer than I have. But we have a chance. We're circulating a petition in California. Go to mothersforpeace.org, mothersforpeace.org, and sign our petition and join in. This is a last-ditch effort. And the industry knows that if we win this, it will put a big damper on the rest of the industry in the United States, because all the reactors in the United States, except for 2 or 3, are now 40 years old. We've had an instance now in Michigan where we shut the reactor, the anti-nuke movement shut the Palisades reactor, which is ridiculously dangerous, on the shores of Lake Michigan. And now they're trying to reopen it. And it's all because the fossil fuel and nuclear industry, what I call King Kong, coal, oil, nukes, and gas, is desperately afraid of renewable energy, because renewable energy is a form of social democracy. Solar panels on rooftops represent the ultimate decentralization and public control of of our energy supply, which is at the core of our being. The reality is, in California, we get way more electricity from solar rooftops than we do from Diablo Canyon. And there are 70,000 people working in the solar rooftop installation industry in California versus 1,500 at Diablo Canyon. That's why the unions supported the phase out of Diablo Canyon. It's outrageous. And one other thing you have to remember, there is no separation between the nuclear power industry and the nuclear weapons industry. One of the reasons that nuclear power plants are being held onto with such a firm grip by the corporations is that the nuclear weapons industry relies on the nuclear power industry for supplies of uranium and for trained personnel, and also to make their technology look good. Remember, this is an industry that promised electricity too cheap to meter, and it's the most expensive form of energy we've ever known. So this fight at Diablo Canyon and at your local nukes, if you're not in California, is a very big deal. So go to mothersforpeace.org and support us, please.
Linda, any thoughts on what Harvey said?
Yeah, I want to go back for a minute to those seismic issues at Diablo Canyon.
Mm-hmm.
The Mothers for Peace, we have been questioning the seismic evaluations that PG&E has done, and they're saying now with the new license application that they don't need to do any updated seismic studies. We have an expert from UCLA, Peter Bird, who is one of the people who contributed. He was a major contributor to this coastal seismology project through the USGS. He says in his evaluation that there are two thrust faults right under Diablo Canyon. And what a thrust fault is one that goes up rather than across. And if you have a thrust fault under a nuclear power plant, you don't even need a very big earthquake to take down the plant because of the tremendous, especially if it's a shallow earthquake, the tremendous amount of damage that a shallow thrust fault can cause. And they have not evaluated these two particular faults. And that's another part of our case at the PUC.
And one last thing everybody should understand, of the 94 reactors in the United States, 0, not one of them has private liability insurance. So, and every homeowner policy in this country has a clause that exempts the owners of nuclear power plants from liability if they destroy your home and your family with radioactive fallout from a nuclear plant that's exploded. 0 insurance. You can't drive a car in California without insurance, or most other states. But the nuclear industry has considered itself above the law since at least 1954 with the Atomic Energy Act. So this is a real test now. And one other thing to remember, and I always got to point this out, people, when they go up against a nuclear plant, have a sense of futility because they're so big. The reality is, in 1974, when we started the no nukes movement, and we coined the phrase no nukes, Richard Nixon said that there will be 1,000 nuclear reactors in the United States by the year 2000. In the year 2000, there were 104. And now we're down to 94, which is way too many. But the anti-nuclear movement has stopped some 900 reactors in this country. God help us if you think there were 1,000 reactors in this country. So we can win at Diablo, and we have no choice. So let's do it, everybody. Go to Mothers for
And
Peace.
it's now or never. If they get the operating license to go on for 20 more years at Diablo Canyon, and the NRC will give them that. There's no doubt about that. Our state legislature could turn around as fast as they did last August and say you can keep that nuclear plant online for another 10, 20, or 20 years. It is absurd. We don't need it. It's dangerous. They need to stop the possibility of ever having nuclear power in California anymore. And there's nowhere for the waste to go. And they keep making more of it. And it's insane. That's it.
So we got 3 questions. I think Peter was first, then Milo, then Mimi. But I do know that, Harvey, when we spoke the other day, you had said that you, of course, wanted to speak on what you and Linda both spoke on, but also a little bit about the necessity of progressives sort of amplifying further their advocacy for renewable energy, and the ways to build up the percent of the energy that is used in the United States that is renewable. And there are specific sort of points of the development of renewable energy where things are backed up, and to get organizations like PDA behind advocating for clearing the way to take things like nuclear power plants off of being online, adding more renewable energy, sometimes which is already built but has not been put into the grids or connected up to the grids. What do you want to add on all of that, Harvey?
Well, we have to remember that the success of renewable energy, of wind, solar, batteries, by the way, are on the brink of a major breakthrough, moving from lithium to sodium. The whole renewable energy industry has been one of the great technological successes in human history. It has consistently surpassed expectations, and we have now the industry, the King Kong, the fossil nuclear industry, throwing everything they can throw at renewable energy to slow it down. And it's still booming ahead. It is still the most rapidly expanding energy source on the planet. We have got to turn this corner, and progressives have got to understand you can't be in favor of nuclear power without dealing with the individual reactors. There are 400 plus individual reactors all over the world. Every one of them is different. France, which has 56 reactors, is importing energy from Germany, which has none. Come on. So every single reactor is an apocalypse waiting to happen, and they have to be shut. And thank goodness we have the alternatives. The No Nukes movement is responsible for giving birth to the renewable energy industry that is the #1 benign growth industry on this planet. And that is something that progressives need to take pride in. And nuclear power is a completely reactionary, centralized, corporate, military source of power. They've got to be shut down.
Yeah, and then it produces the most powerful toxins that we are involved in creating and shipping around and dealing with, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than plutonium. Nothing.
Thank you. And now, Peter, a question or comment for Harvey and Linda. Peter Deutsch.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, this is more of a comment. I live about 15 miles from what may be the first nuclear power reactor in the country, the site of it. Admiral Rickover put it in
Right.
southwestern Pennsylvania. But I've been trying to move away from that myself with using wind and solar energy with clean choice energy. But I also have about 63 square meter solar panels on my roof. And that's great, but one of the inverters, there are 2 inverters on it, and one of them went down. and I'm trying to get it back up. I'm working with the private company to do it, but can I come to you for help if that's a problem? One problem I see is that they may not be able to do anything about it because it comes from a Chinese company, but we're trying.
Well, contact me and there's a guy named Ron Leonard that we work with who knows the industry inside and out, and email me at solartopia@gmail, solartopia@gmail.com, and I'll put you in touch with Ron Leonard.
Okay, thanks. I'll try to put that in my notes.
Okay, good
Solartopia,
luck.
solartopia.com.
So, yeah, well, it's solartopia.org is my website, and solartopia@gmail is my email.
All right, I'll try to remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Peter, and thank you, Harvey. And I had the pleasure of getting to march alongside and Ron Leonard at the Climate March in New York City last week, and talk with him. And yes, he has great contributions to make and can provide great guidance for PDA in terms of understanding the industry, the renewable energy issues, and the blockages about getting renewable energy fully online. And again, there's a big push, as people know, among climate activists. Obviously, no climate activist in the country is more high profile than Bill McKibben, and he is, of course, a huge advocate for renewable energies, getting the renewable energy to completely dominate the sources for our energy on the grid, eliminating coal, eliminating fossil fuels, eliminating nuclear, and then, as he says, electrify everything. Mila Reason, you're up.
Go ahead, Myla.
I just had to unmute. Eager to do so. Alan, thank you so much. And thanks to everyone at PDA for making this extraordinary meeting possible. And it's just so wonderful to see so many of my dear friends here, Linda Seeley, Mary Beth, and Jim, and Harvey, and many more. And I was reminded by Jim, and I've been thinking a lot about how the film San Onofre syndrome really shows us that it's possible that we can win when the people get together and work together to accomplish something. We managed to keep Edison from restarting their very dangerous San Onofre nuclear power plant, and we collectively are going to succeed in finally getting Diablo shut. And I have been spamming the chat with the Mothers for Peace petition, the link to the petition, and I hope that you will all please sign it and share it as broadly as you possibly can. And Linda, I just have a question for you. It's just simple. You had in another meeting posted a link to a wonderful news article about Diablo, and I managed to lose it. And I was wondering if by any chance you could post it in the chat here.
Sure,
And thanks to everybody. And there are a lot of questions, so I'm not going to hog the mic any more than I already have. Thank you.
Thank you. And why don't we go to Mimi right now, and then after Mimi has her question or comment for Harvey and Linda, then we'll go back to Harvey and Linda. Mimi, you're up.
Thank you, Alan. Thanks, everybody. What a great presentation. The lady earlier, thank you right now. Good to see you, Sluggo. I'm afraid it's just a detailed question, and thank you for asking for that article, Mila. That'll be very interesting. How often are these nuclear power plants supposed to be inspected, which they have not done? Was it 20 years? I think I missed that somehow. And
they're supposed to examine the internals of each reactor vessel every 10 years. And that not only includes taking out a sample like I talked about, but also doing an ultrasound examination of the inside. None of those have been done since 2002.
Wow. Thank you so much for that information.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mimi. And anything you want to add, Harvey and Linda?
Well, one thing people should know, this embrittlement issue is all across the industry. What happens is if you have a reactor pressure vessel that holds the contains the nuclear reaction, it's a big cylinder, but the metals are subjected to heat, pressure, and radiation over the decades, and they they lose their resilience. And as Linda explains, if God forbid you have an accident, they pour in water, the reactor pressure vessel will shatter like glass, and you'll have a release of steam, hydrogen, and possibly even nuclear fission, which we might have had at Fukushima Unit 3. And so, you know, and this has happened. And I will say that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission was forced politically by Congress in 1992 to permanently shut the Yankee Row reactor when they were challenged on embrittlement. I actually testified at that congressional hearing, and they were challenged on embrittlement, and the company either couldn't or wouldn't do the test and just never reopened. And that's what we're hoping will happen at Diablo Canyon when they shut down for refueling. They shut for refueling generally every 18 months. They take out about a third of the fuel, but they have to be down around 50 days. And that's the window we're looking at in October or November.
Thank you, Harvey, for all of that detailed information. Tom Wells, please unmute.
Yes, I see all the problems that we have, and all the problems have a single source. The reason that Newsom and the highly democratic California legislature fails to do anything of human value is that corporate money rules ever since '76. And the Supreme Court has taken great pains to us to demonstrate that they will either govern us or we will throw them out. Article 1, Section 3 says, judges shall serve on good behavior, and passing obviously unconstitutional precedents from to McDonald in 2017 precludes any systematic success. We have to have systematic success to address climate at the scale and time frame that is required. Does this elicit any comment?
Thank you, Tom. Linda, why don't you go?
You know, we can deploy we could, if you read Mark Jacobson from Stanford, if you read his work, but he says right now we are prepared, fully prepared to go completely renewable in California, using the battery backup that we need. And I think what we're doing is, I think you're exactly spot on about the corporate rule. And the problem with our rooftop solar is that it stabs a needle into the heart of corporate rule. And so they don't want to democratize much of anything, but that's up to us, I think. And I really feel like it's now or never, not just for Diablo Canyon, but for our world. We cannot allow this to happen. We have to do everything in each of our own individual power, whatever that power might be. We have to take hold of that and give it our all right now, because this is it. We're at the
turning point. And I want to point out that both the law and the economic realities are on our side. I mean, that's the huge wind beneath our wings in the solar movement, the anti-nuclear movement for the past 50 years, is that renewables has blown away coal, oil, nukes, and gas. And we stand that way in California. As I said, we have 70,000 people working in solar in California and 1,800 at the nuclear plant. And God knows what Newsom's real motive is here. But the other thing, as Linda pointed out, is we have the law on our side. They're breaking the law at Diablo Canyon. They're required to do this test. They're required to follow the law in the relicensing process, and they're just completely blowing it off. You know, we progressives have always felt like we're swimming upstream when it comes to law and economics, but that California would be an infinitely richer place if we were 100% renewable. And you're going to see what's going to happen with Germany, because they shut Germany is not exactly a hippie farm. I mean, they shut their nukes. They knew exactly what they're doing. They're phasing out coal. They know exactly what they're doing. They're going in 100% renewable, and they will lead the world. And you know, California could be right with them. So we are advocating for social democracy, economic democracy, and total prosperity in everything we're saying here. And when you ever hear somebody say that, well, they favor nuclear power, say which plants. Do you favor Davis-Besse, where they had the boric acid? Do you favor Perry, which has been twice hit by earthquakes in Ohio? Do you favor South Texas, where the intake pipes froze? Do you favor Diablo Canyon, which is surrounded by earthquake faults? Which nuclear plants do you support? And tell us which ones have insurance, and then we can have a discussion. So there you go. I don't know what happened on here. Mary Jane, do you want to? Should we unmute you? Oh, Alan, you have your hand up. Oh, okay. So be sure and
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I wanted to bring up the topic that we don't want to talk about. Of course, everything you guys have said is absolutely true, and I have been working on it for 40 years myself. I'm from Massachusetts, like you used to be, Harvey.
Right.
We've both given it up for the heat. I'm in Florida. Anyway, we have to admit that even if you get what you want and they close that damn plant, what are we going to do with that waste? As you know, the fuel rods will still be sitting there, and there is no place to put it. And what can we do?
Well, as Jim and Mary Beth's wonderful film, San Onofre Syndrome shows, I mean, the first thing you have to do with the nuclear waste is stop producing it.
Right.
That is the first thing we have to do. You know,
Right.
it's like you dig in a hole, you stop digging. And,
Right.
you know, once we stop producing it, then we can deal with it. But just remember that what we're doing in stopping nuclear power is essential for the environment. It's essential for the economy. If we wanted to improve our economy and had only a focus on improving the economy and didn't care about nuclear waste or about the environment, the number one thing we do would be to shift to renewable energy. That's number one.
Right.
But you're right. Probably should see the film San Onofre Syndrome to figure out what we're going to do with the waste. Nobody has an easy answer. My answer is it should go to two places. It should go to the White House and Mar-a-Lago, but you have transportation issues, so it's a problem.
Hey, sorry, everybody. I'm back. Simply my computer disconnected from my
okay.
home internet. I believe Ron is on deck next. So
Hey,
I
Ron.
was still connected when I said to the group that I got to meet Ron in person at the climate march in New York, and he has a lot to share that's very valuable for all of us in terms of renewable energy and how to get it online.
Hey, Alan.
Hey, Ron.
I enjoyed meeting you in person. And, you know, I mentioned to you, I met another guy in person who I haven't seen in years. And he was standing next to a bunch of people on the side, listening to speakers. And his name was Bill McKibben.
Oh.
And it was great to see this guy there, because he really was the guy who put the largest environmental march in New York City together in the last decade. And this march of 75,000 of us on a Sunday, which was a nice day, thank goodness, really proved that people understand this issue and understand it really does two things. It leads us to believe, because there's a lot of young people there, that there is a future to have. We have a reason to believe in the future because we know how to fix the present. And the present problem is that we're relying on basically an electrical system that was created in my father's time in the late 1800s and haven't changed anything physically in this process. It's very inefficient. When you put a unit of fossil fuel into a power plant and then transfer that all the way over to the last mile, you only get 20% of that unit of power from the fossil fuel back to electricity. We waste 80% up the stack. That's nuts. We can do better than this. 100% renewable energy is possible, and we can prove it. And the other little fun fact is at the beginning of this year, solar power probably dropped, I don't know, 50%. Well, within that 6 months, 7 months now, it dropped 50% again. This is the cheapest it's ever been since I started in the business 50 years ago, when we were selling solar panels for $7 a watt, I think 20 cents a watt. This is amazing. The cost difference, the reliability difference. I saw solar panels that were in the desert in Saudi Arabia for 25 years and still working. Well, that was 25 years ago now. Those damn things are still working. There are no moving parts. This stuff just keeps on going like the ever-ready battery. And the last piece of this is, let's put this in allegorical terms. My good buddy Vinny has this 1962 Ford Thunderbird. Boy, this thing is a big behemoth. When it goes down the road, you are driving, with a lot of weight behind you, and it's going to be hard to stop. Well, that's sort of the allegory that I want to put out here. Would you be driving that 1962 Ford as a daily driver? I know he doesn't. I certainly wouldn't. That's a little bit dangerous, Think of that nuclear power plant that was made in the 60s being your daily driver. Makes no sense, and it's the most expensive type of energy that you can produce in today's society. It doesn't work. And the new nukes, which is what they want to push now, forget about the big ones that we know are crazy. They want to produce these little mini nukes that were 60 megawatts, 80 megawatts. Well, they're going to stick them all over the place. They're also more expensive than the old nukes, and there's no one out there to protect these little mini nukes if they want to put hundreds of them out there. This is, again, a illogical way of producing power when we know how to produce it cleanly, just like they're doing on those solar roofs that Harvey talked about in California. California has 1.5 million solar roofs. Well, guess what? Australia has 3 million solar roofs, and they're producing the majority of the power in Australia. Germany, which is way north of us, I was there in 2000 in the spring. Well, it's equal to Alaska, and it wasn't very spring-like, but they're producing a majority of their power, sometimes way over 60%, in renewable energy. It works. Let's use something that's reliable. It works, and don't pollute anymore.
Thank you so much. And one of the things that, just to add from what I understand, and my understanding doesn't have as much depth as Ron's on this issue, on the very specific and very important question of, renewable energy, the development of more renewable energy capacity in the United States, and again, the problem with it being still blocked off of going online in the ways that it needs to, is something that Tom Wells wrote into the chat, which is the problems the corporations have with solar is there is no profit stream. Well, there is a profit stream. My understanding is roughly half, or over time in recent decades, proven to be about roughly half of that of the extractive industries like fossil fuels. And of course, it makes sense too that renewable energy is going to be much less expensive. I mean, you put something online, you put a mirror up to the sun, basically. Obviously, a little bit more complex instrument than that. But the solar panels exist. They operate to generate energy. The energy that goes online, it's stored in batteries. But it does not require the continuing digging up and extraction of fossil fuels, whether it's drilling for oil or digging for coal. And this has now been a massive stream of profit for what has, of course, become probably over the past 150 years the single most powerful industry in the United States and in the world, really. And so there's a lot to fight back against that. We need to be organized. But for the average household, in an era where we've seen the return of inflation, we should not be shy about saying, I mean, of course, we want these new companies to have the hope and promise of them being companies that work for the people who start them and for the workers who work there. But it is not going to be the source of these just mind-boggling profits on the level of the international fossil fuel industry, because the public, once they are all more familiar with it, will understand how it operates. It's not continually extractive. It's deflationary from where we are right now. And that's
Yeah.
a very, very good word in 2020.
And the public should ask, what's in it for me? Well, what's in it for me is we are seeing the highest rate increases yearly for basically dirty, unreliable power. And that's also predicted to go up another 17% next year. This is craziness. We shouldn't be doing this. We know better.
Yeah, Ron, I went out to New York I was gone under a week. And I don't know what happened out here in California, but I came back and the gas prices were about 80 cents higher per
Yes.
gallon.
They're unbelievable.
Oil is predicted, which is $95 a barrel now, to exceed $100 again very soon. Well,
Right, and
how
we
does
don't
this
need
work
any of
out?
it.
Yeah.
And, we're switching to electric cars. Electric cars have, so few moving parts. And one thing, I think the biggest problem we face politically in California is that the solar industry is not unionized. And that is a very big piece of the puzzle for progressives. If the 70,000 solar workers in California were in one big union, we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Yeah,
I mean,
it would definitely help for sure. Yeah.
The solar industry needs to be progressivized. Let's put it that way.
The good news here is that the IRA, the Infrastructure Restructuring Act, requires that any large solar project, like 5 megawatts or so, has to be either prevailing wage or union labor. Labor. That is the law. That is the way it's going to be done from now on into the future. So problem solved. We know how to make it effectively in volume. We don't have problems with the parts. We don't have the problems with the technology, and we're going to pay fair wages.
Hey, thank you, both of you, of course, and thank you so much, Ron, for joining us. Dorothy Reich has been
Good seeing
patient, and on to
I
Dorothy.
was gonna mention these mini nuclear plants. It was a bill in California last year, and it didn't make it. But they're gonna have another one, and that a couple of our friends, Brian Schatz and Sheldon Whitehouse, are big supporters of this nuclear. The other thing is that, and the union is very important. Union is, I've been saying this for years. I mean, that's why everybody's fighting. The labor unions are fighting solar because it's not unionized. What was the other thing I was going to say?
Well, the mini nukes, by the way, the mini nukes can't come online, even in best circumstances, 5 to 10 years minimum. So they're going to have
Still,
no
they keep
impact.
pushing them. Oh, the other thing, I can maybe forget again what I was going to say. Oh, yeah, the CPUC here in California. I talked to Ben Allen about getting a bill so that the CPUC appointments have to be approved by the legislatures some way, because a big part of our problem is that Gavin Newsom is appointing all these people to the CPUC who hate solar. They're killing rooftop solar. They're doing everything they can. They're in the pocket of PG&E and the oil companies. And he's getting away with it. And I don't think we can get him to sign legislation, but hopefully the next governor will be willing to sign that legislation, and we won't have this problem with the governors being able to say, well, I didn't do it. It was the CPUC. Well, guess who appointed the CPUC? You did.
Yeah, no, the 2026 California gubernatorial election is something that I know that California, PDA California, PDA activists like Dorothy Reich, I'm of course a resident of California, voter in California. I'll certainly be involved, though not directly as the executive director of the federal PAC. And it's a very, very important election. And I know that, by the way, for people who don't know and aren't familiar with PDA in California, we're a big enough force out here that, the top candidates will be very covetous of our endorsement. And of course, we have something of a dialogue going with some of the prospective candidates in that race who are progressive, sort of not maybe Bernie Sanders progressive, because I don't think yet anybody has tipped their hat that they'll jump into the race who has that profile. And by the way, for people who have never made the connection, California's got a great, set of progressives in its, congressional caucus from California, the largest state representative by 52 members in the House. But none of the squad members are from California. Barbara Lee, Katie Porter, Ro Khanna are all sort of like squad adjacent, but not on the far left of the party. And so, you know, we got some make-up ground in that regard here. And it does have to do with the power of this is like a one-party state now. So, of course, the corporate forces really try to get as much influence as they can inside the Democratic Party. But that election is going to be huge. And we have to get in dialogue with all of the viable candidates because, again, with the 5th largest economy in the world, as Harvey said, the things that we can do in California can change not just California, but the whole country and the world. And Gavin Newsom, you know, he's going to be the governor until then, unless something unforeseen occurs. But that's a really huge election. Single payer in California and on so many green issues and economic issues. We really have to be very engaged in that election.
I absolutely believe Gavin Newsom is just waiting for Biden to fall off his bicycle again. He'll be in, you know, because he's doing a lot of stuff, and he's vetoed a couple of bills that he wouldn't veto for California. He vetoed one where judges don't have to consider whether a parent supports his child's gender identity when deciding who gets custody in a divorce. And one other, and that he vetoed a bill to mandate that human beings be in these semi trucks. And they now can be fully automated on our highways, big 18-wheelers. So I don't know what. That's not a California veto. That's a veto for the country.
Yeah, no, and I think what you're saying is correct. There's just the added phrase when you wrote in the chat that Gavin Newsom is running for president in 2024. He is running for president in 2024 because he's doing it if there's one condition is met that hasn't been met yet, but could be met, which is that Biden would drop out. But if anybody's paying attention to him and what he's doing and why he's so going all across the country and sending targeted advertisement into other states, it's very clear that you are correct in what you're saying, Dorothy. Okay, well, enough on California and Gavin Newsom. Thank you, Dorothy. And let's go to Mike Hirsch and then final comments from Linda and Harvey. And that'll be it for our town hall for today. Mike Hirsch.
Thanks a lot. We've been talking about solar power and radioactive power, but the power that I really like is knowledge. Knowledge is power. And we were just fired up with a whole lot of very important knowledge. Now the question is, what are we going to do with it? And I'd like to call out everybody here to please join the PDA call. We're going to talk about climate and energy on Tuesday. We're also going to be having the liaison program get to work and keep working on climate policy. It's great that we're meeting here. It's great that we're talking to each other and sharing knowledge. But now that we have this knowledge power, let's put that power to use. Let's influence President Biden. Let's influence the Congress. Let's not leave our power here on the sidelines. Let's get in the game, get it done. I'm going to drop the link right now. Please sign up for the Congressional Liaison Program. Please sign up for the call and then let us know in the chat that you've done it.
Thank you so much, Mike. And let's go first to Linda Seeley and then Harvey Wasserman for final thoughts. And thank you so much, Linda, for joining us. It's really great to have you with us.
Well, thank you for inviting me to come. We, up here in San Luis Obispo, well, we don't get a lot of chance to speak with people in the LA area. And I think, I don't know where everybody's from, but there have been a lot of people who are not even in the LA area that I've heard today. Mm-hmm. So I really appreciate this diversity of location that is here today. I know we can do this. If you can, this petition is a well-written petition. You can read it. We're sending it to the NRC. We're sending it to Gavin Newsom and to the state legislature in California. And we're following up with the state legislators individually on it. So this is a big effort. We need to build large numbers of people and make sure that our legislators and our governor and the NRC, that they know that we are not going to put up with living in this kind of absolute danger that we're living in right now for an unnecessary, outdated, completely like 1962 exactly mode of getting energy to the grid. It's ridiculous. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Linda Seeley. And Linda is, I believe, properly holds the title of the Vice President of Mothers for Peace. Thank you for everything you do, Linda. And Harvey, your final thoughts for the day.
Well, just remember that we can win this. We stopped 900 nukes from being built. Half the nukes that were ordered in this country have been canceled, stopped in the middle of construction. The latest is a $9 billion fiasco in South Carolina that they wasted on a nuclear plant that will never operate. But this is the turning point, as Linda has said. Diablo Canyon cannot be allowed to continue. We have the solar resources to completely power California cheaply, safely, cleanly. We've got to unionize the solar industry, and we've got to take it to Gavin Newsom. Mothersforpeace.org. You can write me directly, solartopia@gmail.org. You can also join the great Mike Hirsch as one of our moderators on our Monday calls, Green Grassroots Emergency Election Protection Coalition. Contact me, write me directly, solartopia@gmail, and I will send you the link to that. Alan, you're a real prince for having us on. We appreciate it. We love these calls. You guys are really, really great. But remember, we're used to winning. We won in the Civil Rights Movement. We won in the Vietnam War movement. We won so many other victories. This is one that we got to do right now, and we can definitely do it, as Ron Leonard has shown in an industry that he helped build. So whenever somebody tells you they're in favor of nuclear power, you say, which reactors are you in favor of, and which ones have insurance, which ones aren't going to blow up? Come on, people. Come on, Bill McKibben and all you others. And there's no reason, no excuse for supporting nuclear power. If you don't know the insides of all these reactors the way we know Diablo Canyon, then you have no business supporting any atomic reactor. So join us, please. We need to win this. It's in the next couple of months. And by the way, any of you who are members of KPFK radio in Los Angeles, please vote for me and for the New Day Coalition. We have one more week on that election. Email me about that too. Thank you, Alan. You're great.
Thank you. And that would be also for people who live in Houston, in the Bay Area, and New York and DC, where there's where the 5 main Pacifica stations are. That election closes out on Saturday, September 30th. Well, look, I want to thank Harvey Wasserman, and I want to thank Linda Seeley, and I want to thank our 2 filmmakers who joined us, whose name was I do not have in front of me. Their film is called the
Jim and Mary Beth.
Yes, that's right. Mary Beth Brannigan and Jim. There we go. Thank you. And yeah, their film, and Lisa Smithline, I want to thank, who was unable to join us because of a family matter right now. By the way, for everybody who is I don't know, I say it the way that the Jews say these things. So anybody who's an observant Jew, of course, it's Yom Kippur at sundown. So that's of course a very serious high holiday, time of reflection. Always good for people to take time out for reflection. So there's that. If people are unaware, that's starting very soon, and very, very soon for people who are on the East Coast. And I want to thank, of course, Emma Claire Foley from Roots Action in Diffuse Nuclear War. Please check out the events around diffuse nuclear war, and also do what you can to make statements online, on social media, wherever you are, calling for and adding on support for addressing nuclear proliferation. These are dangerous times. As we talked about, the climate emergency is not going to make it any safer in terms of geopolitical and international conflagrations, let alone the fear that we could get in a situation where they can't track the weapons that do exist like they need to. These things need to be eliminated, and PDA has always stood for that. We also have always stood against nuclear power. It's a little sad, by the way, to see in the chat I was aware of it, the things with Bill McKibben. I think the thing we have on our side, and I'm sorry, I should just close this out and go to family time. Everybody should stick around for family time. But for people who don't know, the big ally, when you see people like James Hansen and Bill McKibben start hedging, I don't know why they're doing it, is that these things are not getting invested in. And, so let's keep the energy up. let's shut the any drive to create new nuclear power plants down, and let's continue to support PDA. We're going to go to Family Time with Susan Kiefer will be first to speak on Family Time, and join us next week again for our next PDA Town Hall.